Hey, it's Tpok. I'm back in true Remembrance, and we left off with Emily in my apartment and the mysterious girl we don't know of. I retorted as I thought back to how she'd hardly touched her dinner because she was so engrossed in the book. Emily shot me a ridiculously happy smile in response. Good, good. Been worried, see? She doesn't express interest in much. I read to her every night. Don't know whether she's listening or not. You read a book to her. No kidding. Huh, I'd never have guessed. Agreed. But she must have been listening. Otherwise she wouldn't be able to read this at all. Anilye said as his fingers ran gently through the sleeping girl's hair. But he pulled away as a matter of seconds later, when she started to stir in bed. It wouldn't do to wake her after all. Then exactly who and what is she? There's something really off-kilter about her, don't you think? I didn't really know whether it was an appropriate thing to ask, but damn it, after all the trouble he'd put me through, I don't care anymore. Very well. There's a certain place, a couple that lives there. This is their daughter. They kept her locked up in a room ever since she was little. Hold it, they loved her in their own way, but they had no idea what to do with her, or something. So I took her. Parents are better off. She's better off. Win-win. Problem? Mnemonicidal protocol permit. Had to hide her, so that's the story. Okay, but that doesn't make this situation any less weird. I mean, you? Out of the kindness of your heart? Unbelievable. Ha! Harsh. But also true. He said with a laugh, but then his eyes narrowed. Hey, he actually opened his eyes this time. All trace of kindly old man evaporated at that instant, giving way to the cold, calculating alpha of omegas that I knew so well. Indeed, I am not doing this out of charity. I have my use for her soon enough. You just imagined something wicked and evil, didn't you? No, not at all. I was too shy to say anything more, so I concentrated on drinking my coffee instead. Anilye, on the other hand, went back to pretending to be a kindly old man, except there was this twinkle in his eyes. Clearly, he found toying with me to be fun. Why did you send her to me? Don't make me repeat myself. Though I thought I could trust you. Besides, didn't know if you were alive. Sent her to check up on that. 2 birds with 1 stone, see? I'm alive, thank you very much. So I see. Congratulations. That was always the excuse he gave for his visits, to see if I was still alive. I had no idea what was really going on in that brain of his, and I didn't care either. Best not to ask questions. Shouldn't you get awfully tired of checking up on me at some point? I asked with full sarcasm. But Anilye shot me this strange and almost sad look. Not at all. Had a people like you once, stubborn as a mule. Liked him. He didn't like me one bit, though. So, was he asking me to like him in this student's place? No way was I going to do that. Because his harmless old man act was just that, an act. In actuality, this guy was as dangerous as a pit of vipers and then some. You wouldn't turn your back to him in broad daylight, let alone in a dark alley. Besides, I could never get bored of watching you. You say you don't care about anything, but that's not quite true. Deep inside, you think you can still change things. You haven't thrown hope away yet. Absolutely fascinating. I glared daggers at him. He didn't look impressed. And sure enough, I hadn't managed to shut him up. Mnemonicide killed you. Then it brought you back, in the middle. There you are. I don't recall asking for psychoanalysis, thank you very much. Oh, my apologies. Bad habit of mine. I sighed. He didn't have to tell me. I already knew. Since he kept on apologizing profusely, I eventually waved him off. Alright, I understand. Your secret is safe. I won't say a word. So what'll you do now? Wake her up and take her back home? Let's see. Need to be in my place by dawn, otherwise they'll get suspicious. Oh well, let's wake her. Annalie called out to her, "Hey, wake up." But the interesting thing was, there was one thing he wasn't saying. What's her name anyway? Doesn't have one. Didn't give her one. She's my project, not my daughter. Doesn't need a name. He replied with a vague smile. But the thing was, there was something so tender about the way he was looking at her. The girl opened her eyes and smiled at Annalie with obvious relief. Then she got up out of bed and scampered after him. He was already heading out the door. Thanks for everything. I'll bring you something next time. Sure. The girl shot me a look before walking down the stairs and out of sight. I smiled back, because for a moment she seemed desperately lonely, and said, "Feel free to come back and read my books whenever you like." Her eyes opened wide in surprise. Then she blushed and managed a happy smile before turning to leave. Our nameless girl started dropping by to see me pretty regularly after that. She'd always come in the evening. It was probably too risky for her to be wandering about in the daytime. No wonder. If I were her, I'd want to avoid being pursued by those black-suited goons as well. The pattern was always the same. She'd immediately go to the books upon arrival. After a few hours of reading, she'd stand up and go back home. I'd always offer to walk her back, but she'd never accept. It wasn't that she was even a bother, far from it. But still, wasn't it a bit suspicious for a girl to come visit a man's room, always late at night? So I kind of wanted to say something to her, but I never had the heart to bring it up. Besides, I didn't want to give her the impression that she wasn't welcome here. She came last night as punctual as the clockwork that was missing in the town. As usual, she picked out a book. As usual, she started reading it with gusto. Except this time around, she fell into a sleep so deep that I simply declined to wake her up. Which was why, in the morning now, her eyes fluttered open and she jumped out of bed in shock. "I'm so sorry," she said with a worried look on her face. She'd started talking to me as of late, short sentences and single words, but that was still progress. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised. She spoke just like Annalie. Hopefully she wouldn't start imitating his personality as well. "Oops, stole your bed." "Oh, don't worry about it. Did you sleep well?" "Yeah, much nicer than the bed at church." "I see. Annalie, you cheapskate, couldn't you at least buy her a better bed?" I looked out the window. The sun was just starting to peek in from the horizon. It would be dawn soon. "Well, want some breakfast before you go?" "Don't want to be a bother." Well, I suppose I should have been relieved. Her personality was completely the opposite of Annalie's. Although this, too, was a problem because she went too far in the other direction. "But see, I've already made breakfast for two. I'll be even more bothered if you don't eat up." She nodded happily. So after an early breakfast, she went back to reading our books. But by the time lunch came around, she started wandering around my apartment in boredom. I had lots of books, so this came as a total shock. She'd read them all cover to cover. So she pulled a random book off the shelf and started reading it over. The problem was, it was one she'd read not too long ago. Obviously, she still remembered most of it, nothing interesting about that. I watched her for a short time and then asked, "Want to go buy some new books?" She had a completely thunderstruck expression on her face at first. Obviously, she hadn't grasped what I just said. But soon enough, that gave way to a great deal of happiness and a great deal of confusion. Her way of saying that she really wanted to go, but it was too dangerous, I suppose. "Oh, don't worry about it. If they're around, all we have to do is lose them. It's elementary," I said with a smile, but she was still rooted in place. The good thing about this series is the way I have to record this game. You can't see my printer being annoying. So I took her hand and pulled her up to her feet. She didn't offer any resistance. Because if I didn't do this, she'd never venture outside again. She followed me out the door with a newly resolute expression in her eyes and a new boldness in her step. And so we stepped into a town filled with rain and tears. So far this place reminds me of symphonic rain. Now, because now it's actually raining the entire time. But it looks like it's always has some form of precipitation in the town. Or so far it has. It's always either like snowing, about to snow, raining, about to rain. So the rain that fell upon the city was cold and clear. And when it came time for winter, the rain turned to snow. Oh, wow. Okay. I only had one umbrella in my apartment, so we walked together, slowly. I surveyed the area. No suspicious people or black suits in the area. We walked along the road to 6th Street. I didn't want to draw any untoward attention, and taking the trolley would have done just that. My companion looked all around with breathtaking interest. Everything was new to her. That wasn't so unusual. She'd probably only ever seen our city under the cover of night. According to Annelie, the first time she'd ever stepped outside was when she'd come to me for the first time. And she'd been chased the entire way, so I didn't really think that counted. Every few seconds I had to call out to her, to keep her from slipping on a puddle or crashing into a wall. And she'd always look up at me with this bashful smile on her face. We walked to 6th Street in a relative silence and entered the bookstore. She looked around in wonder at all the books that were lining the shelves. I was afraid she'd get lost for hours inside the place, but she quickly chose a book for herself and came back. I had the cashier ring up the purchase and handed the book to my companion, who hugged it to her chest with a look of such bliss that I almost felt guilty. "Thank you," she whispered with a smile. It was the same expression of warmth and relief that she put on whenever she saw Alia. We wandered around the storefronts after that, and I became aware of the presence of a black suit in the crowd. So I grabbed my companion's hand and ducked into a nearby store. She was taken completely by surprise, but she followed me in regardless. We hid there for a while. We could see the black suit circulating through the area, so our tensions were high. It was the same guy from before, but it didn't look like he'd noticed us. It was more that he was tracing the trail my companion had taken to get to me in the first place. I watched him systematically stop by at every store along the way and talk to the shopkeeper. He was probably inquiring about my companion here, and he was coming this way, which meant he'd be at this store soon. I took a deep breath, took my companion's hand, and walked out of the place. I opened up my umbrella, held the girl close to me, and walked right past the black suit. We walked in silence like that for a time. I turned to look and saw the black suit had disappeared. So he hadn't discovered us. Thank God for that. Just then she started struggling a little. She was probably uncomfortable in my grasp. Hey, the rain stopped. Oh, sorry about that. I let go. She stepped back and silently averted her eyes. She was blushing furiously, too. What is with the rain? I hadn't intended to hold her so tightly, but that was what ended up happening, obviously. and for the entire trip back to 5th Street, she refused to so much as look at me once. We were nearing my apartment complex when she suddenly burst out laughing. Wow, scary. Couldn't breathe. Glad that's over, she said with a sigh of relief. That's understandable. Don't you get scared too, sometimes, Blackiris? She asked, her eyes open wide. And I realized this was the first time she'd ever called me by my name. Sure I do. There's not much I'm not scared of. She kept on laughing gently. Obviously, she thought I was joking. She started reading the book the moment we got into my apartment. Well, to be more accurate, she made good effort, but was asleep within minutes. Probably tired out from all that walking. But man, did she sleep a lot. Enelier came by that evening. He brought some pasta and vegetables in a bag with him. He obviously wanted me to make dinner for him. She wasn't at the church, so I thought she must be in here, he said as he came to the bedside and stroked the sleeping girl's cheek. I got out of my chair, took Enelier's bag, and went to the kitchen. Enelier got into my chair and stayed put. I started washing the vegetables for a salad when Enelier started talking to me. She started talking a lot, hasn't she? Sure. Not a lot, though. Just a few words here and there. She's never uttered a word, not in all the time I've known her, but she wants to talk. To you. That's why. I turned to stare at him when he said this. His eyes met mine, narrowed, gleamed with vicious light, and awfully amused. Obviously, he'd been waiting for this. So I turned back to the salad. It's the truth. Not a single word to me. Wasn't necessary. But now she talks, and is interested in all sorts of things. I plated the salad and pasta and carried everything to the table. As I approached the bed in order to wake our sleeping beauty, Enelier casually remarked, I wonder, if you like her, you can keep her, if you promise to treat her well. Are you serious? But his face was its usual harmless old man mask, impossible to tell whether he was joking or not. I glared daggers at him. Maybe I was starting to get mad, maybe I wasn't. I didn't really know, but I had to say something. Unlike you, I don't keep people as pets. If you really want to treat her well. I don't. I don't love her. Really? Then why are you running your fingers through her hair like that? And why that loving look in your eyes? I don't love her at all, he repeated softly, except to me it sounded like it, as if he were trying to convince himself of it more than anyone else. I had no idea what was going on in that mind of his. Neither the girl nor Enelier came by my apartment any more after that. And as for myself, I became so busy with my own work that I didn't really think much about them. But there came a point when I found myself between assignments, and I began to wonder about what happened to that unlikely pair. I'd been planning on heading out of town anyhow, so I decided to drop by the church. Maybe I'd find the girl there. I was, after all, starting to get pretty worried about how she was doing. It was an unusually sunny day. Shards of stray light flickered and faded in the puddles that dotted the streets. The stained glass windows of the church came into view, almost alive in the day star's shining exultation. This place again. I opened the door and went inside. It was pleasantly cool within, the air quiet and still. I remembered that the girl lived in the basement, except it was too dark for me to really see much, which meant I had no idea where the stairs down were supposed to be. Well, next time we'll find out who that person was that's there with him. So, yeah, thanks for watching.